Thank you for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to do something a little bit different. Most of the time I've been talking about aerial drones, and I recently purchased this RoboMaster S1 from Drone Nerds because I wanted to really get into some of the programming capabilities of ground-based drones. Now, these are still in limited supply, but I have no doubt that DJI will make many more of them available in the future. Now, these run about $499, but there's a lot of components that come in the kit. There are a lot of videos out there showing how cool and fun they are, and my goal is actually to dive into some of the programming capabilities, what we can do with autonomous code, AI, and all sorts of other capabilities that DJI touts with this robot. And before I get to that, I wanted to just do an assembly video, show you guys what's involved. I've never done this before, so I'm going to kind of be learning on camera. We'll go through the steps to get this assembled, and in upcoming videos, we'll start talking about the programming capabilities. Inside the box, there are two shelves of components. This is the top, this is the bottom. I pulled them both out. So I have everything laid out, really in no particular order. I just pulled it out of the box. Let me just highlight a few things. If you're not familiar with the RoboMaster competition, I encourage you to check it out. Those guys are doing some really cool stuff with autonomous robots, AI, and a lot of the robots have speakers, a blaster, a camera, and all of that, which all comes in this consumer version of the RoboMaster S1. So we have the gel beads. There's probably a few thousand in there. I believe we're just going to soak them in water and they're going to grow in size. So those actually get shot out of this blaster cannon. And then we have the intelligent controller, the brains of the robot. So we have all sorts of screws that are in this little container, screwdriver, camera. Our battery looks very similar to one of DJI's drone batteries. We have our motors, our wheels, also a gimbal for that blaster and camera to be able to pitch, and I believe yaw. So those are all of the components. We're going to go through the assembly in this RoboMaster S1 book. There are actually 72 steps, I believe, maybe 73. So we're going to see how that goes, but we'll go ahead and begin the build. So the first part of this assembly really is focused on the wheels. We have steps 1 through probably 12 or so that pertain to wheel assemblies. And for the sake of not being redundant, I'll just focus on the left and right wheels. So you can see here, this is a left rotating wheel, and this is a right rotating wheel. For each wheel, there's an inner and an outer hub. Step 1 is focused on putting grease in each one of these hubs. There's a lot of little holes, and what happens is these wheel rollers that are essentially like bearings will go in. We want to have just a little bit of grease in each hole. Okay, so I have everything greased up. You might be able to see a little bit of grease in each one of these holes. There are, I believe, 12 holes per hub. Each wheel is 24, and then if you do all 4, that's 96 little dabs of grease you'll need to do. So that's step 1. That should take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. Step 2 actually has us inserting one of the hubs inside of this container. This will help us build the wheel a lot easier. So that's the left side, that's the right. So I'll go ahead and grab the right outer hub. So that's done. The next thing we're going to do in step 3 is get, I believe this is sort of like a damping system. You know, there's this rubber O-ring with this hub. So I'll go ahead and grab one of these and one of these rubber gaskets or O-rings. Slide that on. Actually, it looks like there's a certain way to slide those on. You can see the little notches there. Okay, now step 4, it looks like there's a little bit of a highlight or a call out here. If we take a look at our hub, see there's a red dot right here, and if I put this in, we can see that there is this symbol here, this arrow. So we want to make sure that that arrow lines up with the red hole. You can see all of these others are not colored, but this one is red. So that will complete step 4 for this right wheel. We're going to go ahead and insert our wheel rollers. Now that's where the grease comes in handy. If you look at these rollers, there's little pegs on each end. So what I'll do is I'll just set one in. We'll go all the way around the hub and insert those. Okay, so we have this first right wheel with all of the rollers installed. I believe there are 12. So we'll go on to, I believe, step 6. And that shows that we're going to put the other side of the hub on. So I'll go ahead and grab one of these right hubs. Once again, I've gone ahead and greased that up. And there is another call out in the instruction sheet. So if we take a look at this, you'll see a little bit of a notch at the top, that little triangle. So what we're going to do, we'll line that up with the red dot. We put that O-ring with that arrow lining up with the red dot. And now I've gone ahead and lined that notch up so that all of the wheel rollers are inserted, ready to go for this right wheel. And then what we'll do next is actually put these screws in. So step 8 has us getting these T2 screws out of here. See our screw container. If we look at the actual, it actually goes as far as showing us which compartment within this container. So this compartment, I believe we're going to use 5 of these for this right wheel. So I'll go ahead and put those in. Okay, I have everything screwed in. Let me share an added plus. This DJI screwdriver is magnetized, which is incredibly helpful. And I've gone ahead and added the 5 screws in here. Pull out this wheel. Once again, this is the right wheel. And what we'll do next is we can flip this over. This side with the R, the RoboMaster logo, is for the right wheel, and we'll flip it over. And then I'll do the left wheel. Our wheel assembly is complete. We have 4 mechanism wheels. Now, if you're not familiar with this design, it's very common in robotics. These wheels will allow us to move in an omnidirectional manner where we can move sideways, forwards, backwards. They're actually really cool. And just as a side note, we have some extra rollers. So I was concerned at first that I didn't have all of them inserted, but DJI provides a couple extra. That covers the first 15 steps. That might take you 30 to 45 minutes to assemble the wheels. And next it looks like we're going on to doing some frame or chassis assembly. So step 16 looks like we're just inserting a cable tray inside the bottom of this chassis. So I'll go ahead and take this tray. It's going to just, looks like slide right in and then snap into place. We'll put a little screw in there, a T2. Okay, step 16 is complete, and if you haven't already noticed, these instructions are very similar to what you'd see from IKEA, which we've all probably had our frustrations with IKEA instructions, but so far these DJI graphical instructions have served me well. So it looks like step 17, we're going to be putting 6 screws in this chassis assembly. See here that it's not completely assembled yet, so snap those together and we'll put in these 6 screws. Okay, moving on to step 18. This is the front axle assembly. So we're going to be screwing those 2 pieces together. I want to make sure that I can tell by the drawing that we want these 2 knobs sticking out, and then we want these 2 look like threaded holes in the back. So we're going to assemble it this way. We'll use these 4 T3 screws to assemble it. Steps 19 and 20 consist of taking that front axle assembly we just put together, this middle chassis, and this piece to hold it together. So what we'll do is, looks like, see this hole down here? You can see part of this axle sticking out. So we're just going to make sure we insert it in there. And then we're going to take this last piece that looks like an X. We're going to slide it in here. You see this hole? It's going to go on the other side of this axle. It should just hopefully snap into place. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and add the screws. So our front axle assembly is installed. Let me just make a side note to be careful not to over tighten. This is all plastic, so you don't want to get too tight. Just get a nice to where you can feel a good bit of resistance to where it almost stops, and then just leave it there. Okay, so now we're moving on to step 21. Looks like there's a nice, for lack of a better term, power distribution board where we're going to plug everything in. So it looks like we're just going to snap it into place in the chassis. So I'll go ahead and grab this, Looks like this is going to go on my right side. If you look underneath, there's these notches here, and down here there are notches as well, so should be able to just hopefully click this into place. And it looks like step 22 is just connecting our main power from the distribution board to the rest of the robot. So go ahead and take this connector, plug it in. Let me make a quick correction as it relates to this component right here. I was actually looking in the manual. You can see all of these components are labeled. That's not a PDB. It does handle power distribution, but they call it, DJI calls it the motion controller. So that's just for reference. Okay, let's move on. We're going to step 23. It looks like this is, they call it the left armor for the chassis and a hit detector. So this RoboMaster S1 comes with 4 hit detectors, and this is the left armor. So what we'll do is, you can see these cutouts. We're going to slide this in so that we can run our cables into it. That snaps into place, but it also looks like we're going to add 2 M3 screws to this. Okay, now step 24, it looks like we're going to do some wiring of that hit detector. It says we're going to use this Q3 quantity of 1. You can see there are 3 different lengths. So there's a short, a medium, and a long cable that comes with the kit. So looks like we're going to use the medium. So I'll go ahead and pick this middle one out, and we're going to go ahead and plug it into this side of the hit detector. Looks like in step 25. Let me flip this over. Looks like there's this notch up here. Go ahead and click that in, snap that into place, and it shows in step 26 running our cable through this notch. So we have this little notch here, which is handy. Go ahead and run it through there, and then I believe we'll just feed it through here to the top. And now I see where this cable retainer or tray comes in handy. I'll just snap that into place, flip it over, and it shows in the diagram that we want to go into this port. It's CAN bus. So good length, not too much slack. Okay, now it looks like we're going to do the other side. So I'll go ahead and grab one of these hit detectors. Go ahead, snap it into place. Screw this in. I'll go ahead and grab my other medium length cable, plug it in here, snap that into place. Make sure the cable's on the outside of this where that screw goes in. And snap that into place. Feed it up through to the top compartment. And let's see where this needs to go. Step 31, so it shows us in the top left. Go ahead and run this right here. And let me just double check to make sure that I have both plugged into the right place. Shows us here, right here for the left side and here for the right side. So everything looks good so far. Let's move on to step 32, but let me mention real quick, I forgot to mention this in the previous section, that I did screw this chassis armor in place. I forgot to do that, so just added 2 screws here and 2 on this side. Now we're going to go to step 32, and we're going to put a hit detector on the rear chassis armor. So that's this piece here, and as with the other pieces, we're going to go ahead and just snap that into place. I'll go ahead and screw this in, and it shows that in step 33 we're going to wire this up. We'll do that with one of the short cables. So let's see, I'll grab one of those. It looks like we attach that to this left side here. Step 34 has us running this cable from the hit detector. We'll go ahead and clamp it in using this built-in clamp. Now we're clamped. We're going to go into this plug here, and according to step 35, we'll go ahead and mount these screws in. Let me go ahead and close this. You can see that this cable is going to run through this slot right here. So make sure that we go over that. So it looks like once we mount that, we'll be able to, this is spring loaded. It'll go back and forth. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in place. Grab a couple of these M3 screws. Rear armor's in place. Now we can just snap it down. It looks like step 37 pertains to our 4 motors. Now let me grab one of these. I just want to show you this in detail. It's a brushless motor with built-in ESC, and I can't tell you just what high quality this seems to be. And you can see on the other end just a simple connector like the others. So what we'll do in step 37, it looks like we're going to take the motors and install them to the motor mounts. So there are 4 mounts. I'll just do one of them, and I'm going to drop this connection through here, pull it through. You can see where it goes into the motor, and then we're just going to use that little cutout right there to feed this motor in. Looks like we're going to mount 3 of these M3 screws. I'll go ahead and do that with all 4 motors. Okay, I feel like I needed to sit down for this next step. We're going to wire some of these cables through for these motors. So you can see 38, 39, and 40 consist of taking the motors that we just put the motor mounts on. We're then going to start off with this front left motor. I need to run this cable through. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to drop this cable in here. And hopefully you guys can see this. There's a little hole, if I can get this up through there. So I'm running the cable through the hole. I'll go ahead and slide this motor in for now. That's just gonna lock into place. You can see here our little cable tray. I'll go ahead and mount this motor according to the instructions we need to use. 3 of these M3 screws. Hopefully get this motor nice and secure. Then I'll flip this over. So we have 2 holes on the top, or on the bottom I should say. So now with that motor secure, we're going to connect it, and it looks like, judging from the instructions, this front left motor is going to plug in to this slot right here. And these cables are all just about the right length. There's not too much slack, which is great. So there we have the front left motor. I'll go ahead and fast forward as I do these other motors. Okay, so we have the motors all mounted, and I intentionally left these unplugged. I want to show these connections here in a second, but let me just mention on the rear motors, the wiring is a little bit different. We still slide the motor mounts into the chassis, screw them in, but you can see we have a cable coming out here. There's this little notch. And then what we do in our cable tray is we do a loop. We go down and up, and then we feed it up into this compartment. So now I'm gonna go ahead and wire everything in, try to do this inverted just so you guys can see. So once again, we've already taken care of this front left motor. Now we're gonna do the front right. So I have that cable coming out here, coming through to this cable, to this port here. So I'll go ahead and make that connection. Now let's take care of our rear left wheel. Looking at the instructions, step 44, with the rear left wheel, we're going to cable it up. We've already done that, and it looks like it's going to go on this far right side. You can see that these actual cables and ports are color coded, so that's helpful. And I'm assuming, let me just double check to make sure, with our rear right wheel and this port right here. Now we have our motors all connected and wired up. So it looks like step 50 through about 52, we're going to be mounting the wheels. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, let me show you guys this. Hopefully you can see it. And next to each wheel, on the chassis, there's a tread pattern. And very similar to like a multi-rotor where you have your two opposite rotors spinning in the same direction. That's similar to what we have here with these motors. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line these up, and this pattern is going this angle so we know that this is the right wheel for this motor. Same here. So it looks like I have everything lined up. This one's going this way. So now we'll go ahead and mount these. You can see there are 3 holes in this motor. We have 3 little pegs. What I'll do, I want to make sure I get the right one on there. Sorry, this is a little backwards. I'm just going to put it on there and spin it a little bit till it falls into place. So we have these fat-headed screws that I'll go ahead and put on, and we'll do that for each of the motors now. And real quick before we move on, I just want to demonstrate this mechanism wheel design. Pretty genius, but you can see how it's real easy to spin and move horizontally as well as forward and backwards. It looks like the next sequence of steps, 53 through about 58, have to deal with the front armor for the chassis, installing the hit detector and wiring it to the motion controller. Now, if you've kept count so far, this is our 4th piece of armor with our 4th hit detector. So it looks like we have hit detection from all 4 sides. I'm going to go ahead and click that into place. And it looks like step 58 has us installing these rubber, potentially shock absorbers on the front of the S1. So I'll go ahead and just slide that on. Slide this one on. 56 and 57 look like we're going to use this long cable finally that we get to install this front armor. We'll go ahead and it looks like wire it through, and we'll use some screws up top and in front. And let me just make a quick side note that these front screws are not your typical ones. These are a little bit longer, still M3, but longer so they can fit in this front chassis. All right, step 58, armor's mounted. Let's go ahead and plug it in. It's going to plug into this port right here. So I'm going to get that in the right spot and plug it in. Maybe pull the slack back just a little bit. So now that hit detector on the front is wired up. Step 59, we're going to install this heavy duty gimbal. So you can see it here. And now, judging from the instruction manual, we're going to want these 2 ports up front. So make sure you keep that in mind. So you can see I can put it in place. I'll flip it over, and you want to make sure that those 2 are exposed so that we can cable them into the motion controller. So what I'll do now is it looks like it takes 4 of these M4 screws. Those are a little bit more heavy duty than our previous M3s. Okay, it looks like step 60 may be the easiest of this entire build. We're going to take this speaker, which I believe puts off all sorts of sound effects when the blaster or the cannon is going. Slide it on. Okay, step 61, we take our blaster and we mount it to the gimbal. So I'm going to try to do this for the photo. Looks like the blaster is going to, I guess we'll put it with the speaker facing down in here. And you can see hopefully that these holes right here line up. There are 4 holes. Go ahead and use whatever screws necessary. It looks like the M3 screws to get this mounted. Step 62 looks like we're going to connect the blaster to the gimbal on this bottom port. So hopefully you guys can see that. So that's plugged in. Now this is coming off our speaker. Really not sure where that goes at this point in time. Step 63 and 64 pertain to this intelligent controller. We'll mount it on top of the gimbal and then we'll wire it up. So see, there are 4 holes, and these 4 holes right here. Hopefully just set this in place, and using these M3 screws. And step 64 has us wiring up our intelligent controller to the gimbal. So we'll use one of our remaining short cables, connect it to the intelligent controller, and I'll connect the other end to this gimbal. Make sure that's nice and plugged in. Okay, let's look at 65 and 66. Looks like a camera mount, and then cable the camera to the intelligent controller. You can see this little camera from DJI, 120-degree field of view, f2.4, just tiny. DJI and their crazy cameras, but let me go ahead and get this mounted. So we'll use the same M3 screws that we've been using throughout the build. I'm not sure which way, I'm assuming with the DJI facing up. And let me just add another side note to this build. So far, I haven't found a case where any of the screw holes didn't line up or anything that caused frustration. So I'm actually quite shocked so far at how well this build has gone. Okay, so this is our camera cable. It looks like USB-C on both ends. We're going to obviously take one side into the camera right there, and then we'll plug this into the intelligent controller on this port. There's even a little camera icon, if you can see it there, that lets you know. So now our camera is connected, our blaster, gimbal, intelligent controller, all of that sitting right here. 67, finally, been wondering when this is going to happen. We're going to wire the speaker up to the intelligent controller. So we'll just bring it up here, put it in this little clamp, and then you can see this little hole right here for the speaker. 68 and 69 pertain to wiring up this gimbal to the motion controller. If you recall, our intelligent controller, the blaster, all of that attached to the gimbal, but the gimbal is not currently connected to anything. So that's what this, hopefully I can flip this thing over. If you recall these 2 ports. So what I'll do is I'm going to run the cables up through there, and I'll run this one back up there too. And to be honest, I'm not sure which cable goes into which hole, but I'm going to assume that we're just going to keep them lined up. So we can see here the cable on the right hopefully is going to go to this right port. Make sure that I don't have these mixed up. Okay, so those go straight down. They don't cross, and they go directly to each one of these in the gimbal. Hopefully I did that right. Step 70 has me screwing this wiring, our cable compartment closed, which is kind of a bummer. Hopefully we got this connected correctly, otherwise we're gonna have to undo this and get back in here. Cabling was, as you guys saw, pretty straightforward. So if anything needs to be changed, it's really not a big deal. Okay, looks like step 71 has us installing this plate. I don't actually know what it's called, but I'm going to take a guess and call it a skid plate. So we have it down here. Looks like that part goes forward. So let me just flip this over. Really not sure how safe it is to set this upside down, or just should I hold it in the air, but that's going to go on here. All right, guys, we're getting close. 72 and 73 are related to the gel bead container, which I did not soak in water. I'll do that another time. Hopefully you can go find a video that shows how this thing shoots, but essentially looks like you slide this down to lock the container. I'm going to slide this down, open this up. We'd pour our beads in and just slide it into this compartment. It clicks, and then it'll feed the gel beads to the cannon, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to do some autonomous like Python code to be able to shoot beads out of the cannon. So that's that. I guess that's all the steps. Now we just need to put the battery in. Assembly complete. Now I was proactive and did charge this battery. So let's go ahead and put it in. I know I said this isn't going to be a cool video with all the fun driving and shooting, but let's at least see if we can power it up. The build went really well. No major issues there. Let me just set this down. I think I just press and hold. Okay, yeah. It looks like the S1 is doing some sort of calibration sequence for the gimbal. There's that infamous DJI jingle. So that's it. That's the assembly. In upcoming videos, I'm going to cover programming and some of the capabilities just as it relates to code and being able to write various functions or algorithms for the S1. I really just wanted to share that. I hadn't seen many build videos. I know it was long and drawn out, but the experience was really good, and I'm really excited about the capabilities of the S1. Please feel free to post any comments or questions below, and until next time, thanks for watching.